Hi, today I'm going to be talking about everything that I read in January. January was a really good reading month. Like literally everyone else on the planet, I wanted to step back from reading and kind of find my hobby for it again, because I really genuinely do love reading and I see it as something I fill my time with as opposed to something I have to do. And by stepping back, I found that I really needed to read in order to be happy. Ugh, that sounds so cheesy, I hate that, but I would genuinely be sad if I wasn't reading, and so that was an issue because I also have schoolwork and I just felt like I really wanted to read all the time. So fortunately, that got me to read 15 things in January, which I'm really proud of, and I'm gonna direct my video over to Isadora because I have not prepared the stats yet, so take it away, Isadora. Someone tell me to stop spontaneously filming so that I don't have to do voiceovers like this. Starting with the genres, I read the most sci-fi. Generally though, I read the most horror and sci-fi, but I feel like this is how my reading's going to look like for the next half year because I'm really into sci-fi and horror right now. My average rating for January was actually a 4.3, which is really good. I had a lot of 5 stars, and I didn't rate a lot of things because I also read a lot of novellas and a short story, which makes sense. For formats, it's not where I'd like it to be. Obviously, I want to read my physical TBR. That's the most ideal situation. And someone really needs to take my library card away from me because I just keep reading new releases and stuff. But of course, I naturally read the most ebooks and the least from my physical TBR, which does kind of suck, and I do feel a little bit guilty for it. Finally, for age group, I read a lot of adult books. The numbers are definitely not equal in any way. I have a children's book in there, some YA and middle grade, but for the most part, I'm just sticking with whatever I want to read, and whatever I want to read happens to be adult most of the time. I was also binge reading a series, so that series is an adult series, so there are my stats. There are some things that I'm not going to be talking about in this video. Starting off, I'm not going to talk about Carrie or the face on the milk carton because I read these for a video which isn't out yet because I haven't read the last book for this video, but a one-word answer as to what I thought about them. Carrie, average / boring, or the face on the milk carton I described to be better than I expected it to be. I'm also not going to be talking about the Themis Files series. I read the first 2 books in that plus the respective novellas, and the reason I'm not going to talk about that is because I'm going to be doing a dedicated video review, which I am not emotionally prepared to do yet, okay, because I have finished the last book in February, but I'll leave that for the video as to not spoil any of my feelings. But generally the overall series I am in love with. It has my entire heart. We're obviously going to start with horror because that's what I read the most of this month. First, I'm going to start with Abed by Elizabeth Massie. This is a zombie short story that has become infamous for being very disturbing. I don't know if it's gotten the title of most disturbing yet, but I know that's what it's known for. The funny thing about this is it's literally 13 pages, so I can't tell you what it is about except that zombies in some way are involved. And I did not expect it to be disturbing like that way, so I just need to tell you that there's heavy trigger warnings for sexual assault. I was definitely deeply disturbed, but not in a way that I expected, and I still, a month later, cannot tell you if I mean it in a good or a bad way. Something I do like about this story, is a really weird word to use near this book, but something I do enjoy is Elizabeth Massie's writing. You can be that person and just put a bunch of gore and disturbing elements into a story and then call it a day, but she genuinely wrote the story in a very good way. I don't know where I was going with that sentence, but it's a genuinely well-written story. There we go. It's well written. Elizabeth Massie has really good writing, and it's very vivid writing as well for the imagery and such, which you do not want for this story, but she delivers it. She gives you graphics and everything, and it's just so disturbing, even in the body horror, even though the body horror isn't the main part of the disturbing elements. Again, my thoughts on the actual story itself, I'm still very unsure of. I have this whole thing about like what should be used for shock factor and stuff, but alas, I kind of just don't want to think about this. I do not recommend it. I swear to God, if you read this off of my recommendation, I will not take any accountability, okay? If you get like disturbed or whatever. Next, I have something that's way more softer, okay? Let me just move over a little. That is The Battle of the Bad Breath Bats. This is the first book in the 13th Street series. And it's so cute. I had the sudden urge to read this because I'm pretty sure they had just added this one into my cloud library, so it was in the new editions part of the app, and I thought it was cute. I was in the mood to read something quick. I literally read it like half during class, half afterwards, and overall I love it. It reminds me of this one series I watched when I was younger. It's called Leyendas, where just they experience a lot of like Mexican lore and stuff. The little kids. It's a really cute movie series. It's really also really hard to find. You need to buy it to watch it, but it reminds me a lot of that because the main characters experience the supernatural elements, and they're a group of friends as well, and they have supernatural sidekick friends as well. I really liked that element, the ghost girl and the skeleton guy. I thought they were great additions to the series. And I was also very pleasantly surprised to find that our main cast of characters are Mexican. Plus, this book specifically is set in Mexico as well. Love, love, my heart, my heart. I don't know, I liked it. I think I gave it 4 stars, maybe. Okay, I don't know what to categorize this in. On my spreadsheet, I put it as gothic, and then like the subgenre was speculative, probably, because speculative I consider to be a subgenre. But like this series is really hard to categorize, so I decided I wanted to reread the A Series of Unfortunate Events series because when I was younger, I never got to the last 3 books because I'm dumb. Actually, okay, wait, I was gonna say the last 4, but I did read the 10th one, so at this point in my life, I feel like it's already too late for me to just continue, and I love the series anyways. It's really fast to read, so I decided I would read The Bad Beginning by Lemony Snicket, which is the first book in the series, of course. I really, really loved this one in the series when I was younger, but reading it now, I feel like there's a lot of other books in the series that I enjoy genuinely more, so I think I gave this one like a 3.75. which is pretty good. Like, it didn't meet a 4-star, but it got there compared to, I think, my 5-star that I gave it the original 2 times, 3 times, however many times I read it. A brief synopsis of this series, because I feel like we all assume everyone knows what it is, but I'll give you a little something. It's just about these 3 orphans who end up kind of bouncing around relatives' houses and whoever is taking care of them after their parents die, and then this guy, Count Olaf, coming after them for their fortune because they have a large fortune waiting for them. And this book, first book specifically, is where we meet Count Olaf and they go to stay with him at his house. Yeah, I like this one. I listened to the audiobook because it's a full cast, and oh my god, Tim Curry is the narrator of, you know, all the bits where the characters aren't talking, and the first book only is the only one with a full cast, but Tim Curry continues to narrate at least most of the other audiobooks. I know Lemony Snicket himself narrates some of the other ones, but I think I'm going to listen to this series as opposed to read it with my eyes because I don't own it. I know audiobooks are easier for me to consume, but yeah, I love Tim Curry. I think he narrated it excellently, but I was very, very, very annoyed by the person who narrated Violet. I was not a fan of the voice. Count Olaf sounded like Neil Patrick Harris, and I don't know if it was, or he sounded like the guy who played him in the original movie. I'm actually going to talk about another reread that I have here, and that is Bad Girls Don't Die by Katie Alender, which is the first book in the same title series. And oh my god, I love Katie Alender. I don't think I've ever talked about her on my channel, but She is the author that got me to transition from like older middle grade preteen books to YA, because this is a YA series, and she'll always have a place in my heart for that. But this was the first like official young adult book that I read when I was younger, which is crazy to me, and I never reread it because I've never like had time to go back and just revisit her books. So this year I'm going to be rereading all of her books. This month I'm going to reread the second book in the series, but this series is just, it follows Alexis, who ends up encountering these paranormal activity kind of things in her high school years, and this one specifically is her suspicions about her little sister Casey being possessed. Oh yeah, it's great. It's easy to read. I'm pretty sure I read this in like 24 hours. I read maybe the beginning of it at night, and then I just finished the rest of it the next day. Once again, rereads are just super easy, especially childhood books, because just the nostalgia and like revisiting them. I hate saying this, but I was super scared to read this because I don't know how well it would have held up here, like what is it, 5 years later, 6 years later, and I think it did hold up fairly nicely. I remember being the biggest fan of the relationship in this, because obviously it's going to have a relationship, and this time around, as someone who's learned that she doesn't really enjoy romance, I do find myself less interested in it, but I think it's a pretty cool relationship, especially with the way that it ends. And the way that this book ends too, it feels like it could be left alone as a standalone, but then naturally, of course, there's 2 more books. So if you haven't read this series, I definitely recommend it if you want just quick, easy, supernatural horror. I also wanted to mention how angry the parents in this book make me. Oh my god, they are like some of the worst parents I've read in a long time. Like, luckily I've been reading YA books recently that have really good parents, but the parents in this though, what the heck? They're like the epitome of parents that were being written about around this time. I just thought I wanted to mention that. It's kind of funny, but then reading the book, it wasn't funny at all, because I was like, oh my god, how do you just neglect your children? I would talk about sci-fi, but of course I said I'm not going to talk about the Themis Files, so instead we're going to move on to the graphic novels I read, starting with, After the Rain, which is by Nnedi Okorafor, but the graphic novel was written by David Brame, who was the illustrator, This is a 2021 release of the adaptation of the author's original short story, and I loved it. I thought it was fantastic. It was my first 5-star of the year, which so early in the month, I was pleasantly surprised. Set it up for the rest of the month very nicely. It's just about this girl who ends up, or this woman I should say, that opens her door and she gets touched by this kind of like weird guy that's kind of freaking her out, but he touches her, and then she ends up kind of going through this journey with like magic and trying to figure out what's exactly going on, because she keeps having flashbacks to it. I thought it was fantastic. The illustrations were absolutely beautiful. Definitely a graphic novel I'd want to own simply for the illustrations, and I thought that the story was beautiful but also really cool and nice to speculate about. And the ending, I love ambiguous endings, and so that was great. And then the other graphic novel slash comic, this one's a comic that I read, was the second volume in the Something Is Killing the Children series. Yes, my library got this request in very quickly, which I was very happy about. If you don't know, the series is just about a town that is being terrorized by these monsters, and then Erica Slaughter comes to eliminate these monsters with her sidekick or whatever, the little boy, and whoever else wants to help her. But there's like a lot more to it, and this book gave me exactly what I wanted from the first book. I think I remember in my December wrap-up saying that I just wanted more backstory to Erica, but also to the town and kind of these characters, and it gave me exactly that. We kind of get a flashback into Erica's past a little, or we get more into her life and the people that are specifically in her life. And there's this guy character. Ooh, it ended off on a cliffhanger, and I know that the little mini comics, or not the mini comics, but the comics that are already being released right now, but I think I'm just gonna wait until the 3rd volume comes out in June or July. One of my most anticipated releases. And then I decided that I would make a miscellaneous section for books that I've only read from, or genres I should say, that I've only read one book from. So I have a nonfiction to talk about, and that is If Not Winter, Fragments of Sappho, translated by Carson. This is a well-loved translation, and with very good reason as well. Oh my god, I literally am in love with Sappho's writing. I read it over 2 weeks. I split it up so I wouldn't read much of it, and it's nice and quick because the fragments are literally like 4 lines with 10 words. It's great. I love this, and I think if you want to read some poetry, this is a good option. Obviously 5 stars. And then the last book I'm going to talk about today is One of the Good Ones by the Moulite sisters. This is also a 2021 release that kind of was on my anticipated releases radar as opposed to a direct list that I made. But there's a tweet that made me really want to read this because they said that they were just so shocked by the plot twist. Or not the plot twist, they were shocked by just something that happened in the book, and that made me really want to read it. So this is a contemporary about this girl who ends up dying at the hands of a terrible tragedy. All of the stuff that I read at the beginning of the month is starting to slip my mind a little, but they are grieving her death, and Happy and her other sister end up road tripping with a couple of Kezi's friends to the trip that she was going to take as her graduation, using a handbook from the Jim Crow era, and this is just about like grief and coming to terms with death and such. Oh my god, quotable book to the max. I literally would reread this just so I can get some good quotes, because my dumb brain, I read this on my cloud library, my dumb brain was like, oh, I'm done with this book, let me return it, without remembering that I marked quotes that I wanted to read. And obviously when you return something, your highlights and annotations go away, and I had a little bit of hope because I re-downloaded it, or I rechecked it out, and I saw my annotations and such, and then I was like, okay, I'll come back later to mark them, and they were all gone. They were gone. I love how central it is with the theme of who deserves to be remembered, because this is a reoccurring thought in many of the characters' heads. This is a multi-perspective book. But especially with Happy, who kind of sees the press surrounding her sister and is like, oh yeah, she was one of the good ones and such, and she fought for what she thought was right because Kezi was an activist. And Happy in her mind constantly is like, but why do they talk about her like this and not everyone else, and who deserves to be remembered this way, and did Kezi deserve to be remembered this way? And just all these questions that come up. It's not even specific to Kezi, it comes up a lot more in just other things that happen in the book, and I think it's very, very beautiful. This was definitely, I know this phrase still exists a lot and people say it, but this was definitely something I heard a lot more when I was younger, especially in TV when they would like say something stupid that was very similar to that. I recommend it. Yes, read this book. Oh, and the cover, fantastic. So thank you so much for watching this video. I hope you enjoyed me talking about everything that I read last month. I know I enjoyed everything I read, and I will see you next time. Bye.